Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready to dive into another deep dive.
Always excited to be here.
This time, we're tackling a topic that's probably on everyone's minds these days,
Yeah,
saving money on groceries.
yeah. With prices being what they are, every penny counts, right?
Exactly. So we've been digging into some expert advice, and we found this really interesting podcast with this guy named Mike. He's like a total guru when it comes to grocery
Oh,
savings.
yeah, I've heard of him. He's got some pretty clever strategies.
He does. And one of the biggest things he emphasizes is the importance of planning.
Planning, huh? Sounds kind of obvious, but I'm guessing there's more to it.
Definitely. It's about being strategic.
Yeah.
Like Mike says, before you even think about stepping foot in the grocery store, you got to have a game plan.
Okay, so what does that look like?
Basically, you got to plan out your meals for the entire week.
A whole week.
Yep. That's how Mike does it. He says it helps him avoid those impulse buys. You know, when you're wandering the aisles and you spot something that looks good and you just toss it in your cart.
Oh, I'm totally guilty of that. Me too. But when you have a plan, a shopping list based on those pre-planned meals, you're less likely to stray.
Makes sense. So it's like having that lift becomes your secret weapon against those tempting impulse buys.
Precisely. No more aimless wandering, just laser focus on getting what you need.
All right, I'm starting to see the value in this whole planning thing. It's like setting yourself up for success before you even leave the house.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And speaking of setting yourself up for success, Mike's a huge fan of digital coupons.
Digital coupons, like the ones on those grocery store apps.
Exactly. He says you can find some amazing deals.
I've seen those, but I haven't really used them. Do they really save you that much money?
Mike swears by them. He says it's like a game to him, trying to find the best deals and stack them on top of in-store sales.
Wait, stack them? You mean like double the savings?
Sometimes even more. It's like a double whammy of discount.
Okay, now you're speaking my language.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty awesome, actually. So it's all about being strategic, combining those digital coupons with the sales.
Exactly. Now let's talk about buying in bulk. What's Mike's take on that?
Oh, he's all about it,
Yeah.
especially for non-perishables, like rice, beans, pasta, that kind of stuff.
Right. Makes sense. But what about people who live in smaller spaces? I imagine buying in bulk could be tough if you don't have a lot of storage.
That's true. Mike does mention that storage space is definitely something to consider. You don't want to end up with a pantry overflowing with bulk buys.
Yeah, no one wants a quinoa avalanche.
Exactly.
Oh.
But even if you're short on space, there are still ways to be smart about your purchases.
Like what?
Well, Mike is a huge proponent of buying seasonal produce.
So like taking advantage of what's fresh and in season. I've definitely noticed that produce tends to be cheaper when it's in season.
It is, and it usually tastes better too, right?
For sure. There's nothing quite like a perfectly ripe, juicy tomato in the summer. But is there more to it than just the taste and the price?
You know, there is. When you buy seasonal produce, you're often supporting local farmers, which can be a nice bonus.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even think about that.
It can also be a more sustainable choice, since your food doesn't have to travel as far to get to your plate.
That's a great point. So how does Mike recommend finding the best deals on seasonal produce?
Well, he's a big fan of farmers markets.
Farmers markets, of course, they're great for finding fresh, local produce.
Exactly. Mike says it's a win-win. You get better prices, and you're supporting local farmers directly.
I love that. It's like a community thing, you know? But let's be real, we can't always make it to the farmer's market. Life gets busy. So for those days when you're short on time, does Mike have any tips for, like, streamlining things in the kitchen?
He's a big advocate for meal prepping.
Meal prepping. I've tried that before, but I always get bored eating the same thing all week.
Ah, yeah. I could see how that would happen.
Like by Wednesday, I'm over it.
Yeah. Mike emphasizes variety, though. He suggests, like, roasting a big tray of vegetables, cooking a large batch of quinoa, grilling some chicken or tofu, that sort of thing. And then you mix and match throughout the week.
Oh, okay. So it's not about making a giant pot of the same thing. It's more like creating building blocks for different meals.
Exactly. And Mike says it not only saves time, but also reduces food waste. You know, those sad, wilting vegetables in the crisper drawer.
Ugh, don't remind me. I hate throwing food away.
Right. Meal prepping can help with that. Plus, it can reduce the temptation to order takeout on those busy nights.
Okay, that's a really good point because takeout can really eat into your budget, no pun intended.
Definitely. So meal prepping is like a win-win-win. Saves time, reduces waste, saves money.
I'm sold. I need to get back on the meal prepping bandwagon. Now, what about those grocery store loyalty programs? Are they worth it?
Mike's a big believer in them. He says those discounts and points can really add up over time.
Okay, but you have to be strategic about it, right? Like actually paying attention to the bonus point offers and using them.
Exactly. It's not just about signing up and forgetting about it.
Yeah.
You got to actively engage with those programs to really reap the benefits.
Makes sense. Now, let's talk about generic brands for a second. I have a confession. I'm a sucker for packaging.
Haha, I feel you.
Yeah.
The struggle is real.
Well, am I really sacrificing quality by going for the name brands? Like, is there a big difference?
Well, Mike's a convert to generic brands, at least for certain things. He says the quality is often comparable, but the price is way lower.
So we're basically just paying for the fancy marketing.
Pretty much. Now, that's not to say that every generic product is a winner, but it's worth experimenting,
Yeah.
right? You might be surprised.
True. Okay, so we've got all these great tips. Meal planning, digital coupons, buying in bulk, going generic when you can. It's a lot to keep track of.
It is. And that's where Mike suggests using budgeting apps.
Oh, those things always intimidated me a little bit. I'm not exactly a spreadsheet wizard.
You don't have to be. A lot of these apps are super user-friendly. They basically do all the work for you. You can set budget limits, track your spending, and get insights into your grocery habits.
So instead of just throwing things in the cart and hoping for the best, you can be more mindful about where your money's going.
Exactly. It's all about making those informed choices. But Mike says it's not just about the practical tips. He believes there's a mental shift that needs to happen too.
A mental shift. Intriguing. What does he mean by that?
He says instead of just viewing food as a cost, we should think about the value it brings to our lives.
Value, huh? That's interesting. I've never really thought about it like that.
Yeah, he's talking about like, do we see food as fuel, a source of joy, a way to connect with others? And how do those different perspectives influence our spending?
That's a really good point. It's not just about eating to survive. It's about the whole experience, right?
Exactly. It could mean exploring new recipes that use budget-friendly ingredients in fun, creative ways. Or maybe it means starting a little herb garden.
Ooh, I love that idea. Fresh herbs can really elevate a dish, and they're so expensive at the store.
I know, right? It's about those little things that can bring more joy to your meals without breaking the bank.
So it's not about depriving yourself. It's about being mindful and intentional, finding that balance between saving money and enjoying what you eat.
Exactly. And that wraps up this week's deep dive on grocery savings.
Wow, Mike's given us a lot to think about. From practical tips like meal prepping and using digital coupons to like this whole mental shift around food.
It's a whole new way of looking at grocery shopping, isn't it?
It is. So as you head out on your next grocery adventure, remember, you've got this. With a little planning and a sprinkle of mindfulness, you can save money and still enjoy delicious meals.
Bon appetit.
And on that note, we'll see you next time for another deep dive. Bye, everyone.